The way you delivered a lot of that landed really, really well. It brought it to life. And when I was listening to it back, found myself chuckling along because you absolutely
Great.
nailed it. And so because obviously I wrote it and I can hear it in my head when I'm reading it, but then to hear it back, oh yeah, that's exactly it. Nailed it, and it made it really brought it to life. So yeah, that was tremendous, and hopefully people who listen to it will really get it.
Well, Sam, let's start with why you and your mate attacked Tim Levens. Never heard of him. There was well-practiced defiance in his tone. So why did you attack him then? Who says I did? Your fingerprints in his house say you did, Sam. Fielding sat back and smiled. Nice try, he said, confident. We had gloves on. Cameron stifled a laugh. Keegan raised his eyebrows. The duty solicitor rolled her eyes. She leaned across to her client and whispered, Stick with no comment from now on, Sam. Jamie Sinclair, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. Nice to see you, Graham. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, eventually. It's been a while. We've worked together on Crossing the Line, the first Inspector Keegan novel. Now, the book is set in Morecambe, Lancashire. Is that where you are right now?
It's not. I'm near there right now. I'm about 35 miles away. I lived there in Morecambe for more than 40 years. And then just around COVID, we moved to where we are now, but it's only just down the road, about 35 miles away. So still close enough.
Yeah, so it's within the region. So can you say the name of where you are? Are you comfortable to let that out there?
Absolutely. We're in a little village called Wheaton. And unless you live in Wheaton, you won't know where that is. So for easy geographical reference, it's between Blackpool and Preston, because everybody knows where Blackpool and Preston is. So
Right, okay.
imagine,
That's a nice
imagine the
part of the
spot
world.
in between. Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
It's nice. It's handy for the seaside, but handy for the motorway to go somewhere that's, elsewhere, I
yeah.
suppose.
You got the M6, haven't you, really close by? It takes you up to the
Literally
lakes and
5 minutes away. Yeah, so it's
yeah, and into
handy.
the northwest and all the way to the Midlands and beyond to the gateway to the south as well. Yeah. So yeah, because I think I mentioned when we were working on the book that I used to spend a lot of summers in Lytham, which isn't that far away. So would that be closer to where you are now or closer to Morecambe?
No, that is closer. So Lytham, from where I am now, to give you an easy reference, if I get in the car, it's about 15 minutes. But you've probably heard of the Lytham Festival,
Mm-hmm.
which is on every year, the music festival. And it's just and so been on last weekend. And if you're in the garden at night here and the wind is blowing in the right direction, you can hear what's going on the stage on the Lytham Festival. So
Right.
it's as
Okay.
close as that.
Right. So you're within earshot of Lytham, pretty much.
If the wind's blowing the right way, we are, yes.
Yeah. My cousin still lives in Lytham. He lives on St Anne's Road East. In the same house that I used to go and visit my auntie at and stay for the summer school holidays and stuff. It's a lovely part of the world.
It is.
Because I grew up in Great Sankey near Warrington. Although I was born in Liverpool, which is why I'm a Liverpool fan, and you're a Liverpool fan as well.
Yeah.
So how come you were a Liverpool fan growing up in Morecambe and not a more local team? You know, Preston North End, where
Well,
Liverpool played not that long ago, a couple of nights ago.
yeah, literally yesterday, I think,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
it was.
Yesterday
Yeah,
afternoon.
yeah.
So Liverpool fan because I was born, believe it or not, viewers and listeners, I was born in the 70s. I know, but I look very well on it, clearly.
Yeah.
Um, and in the late 70s, early 80s, when TV was shown on terrestrial TV, they generally obviously picked the team that was the most successful at the time, and they were on most of the time, and that was Liverpool. So that
Right.
was what I was exposed to most. So I watched them the most. And when you're
Right.
at school playing football as a kid and pretending you're certain players, you pretend you're players in a Liverpool team because that's what was there. If the most successful team had been somebody else, then chances are I would have supported somebody else. But once it gets hold of you, now as an adult, stuck with it. But I keep a close eye on Morecambe, and again, unless you're very local, I mean nothing to you. But Morecambe as a club are in dire straits at the moment,
I've
and I've been
heard
following
this.
that closely because the owner has been even in the House of Commons has been urged to sell the club for the benefit of all concerned, and he's um, so far refusing to do so. So it's proven challenging. Hopefully the club will still exist this time next week. It may well not. So fingers crossed. But yeah, Liverpool, apart from obviously a very high profile and very, very sad and tragic moment in the last couple of weeks, it's a very good time to be a Liverpool fan because they're very successful and doing very well. So that's good.
Yes, but with an amazing history. And I want to talk briefly about the history. And people will think, I thought they were going to talk about the book. Well, I am going to talk about the book because there's a question I've got for you that when I was narrating the book, I noticed that there are various characters in the book that share their last names with former Liverpool players. Like, for instance, there is Keegan, Inspector Keegan. There's a Barnes, there's a Hughes, there's a Fowler, there's a Jones, there's a Milner, and there's a Torrens, which is close to Torres for me. No, Torrens,
Well,
which is close to... So I don't know whether that was... Now, is this intentional or subconscious?
no, that's entirely intentional and lazy. And I will actually show you because I'm sitting at my desk in our office.
Right,
So and we're not on a blurred background, which I often am at work. So you'll be able to see this. So what I have on my desk is this. This is
right,
the current Liverpool desktop calendar.
right.
Now, last year or the year before, I was writing. So every month there's a player. You can see where we're going with this.
Yes.
So depending on the month, it would have been Keegan for whatever month it was. When I was writing Crossing the Line and needing a title, I was probably staring at the month that had Keegan on it, and so on and so on and so on. Or James Milner, or so on and so on and so on. So you're absolutely right, and it's no secret, and good one for the keen readers because they're in there. So they are all, but apart from Torrance. So Alex Torrance appears. The name appears in multiple books of mine.
Okay.
And that is a link, and there are other links even in Crossing the Line. That is a very specific Stephen King reference to the guy out of The Shining, who was Jack Torrance, the lead
Okay.
character in Stephen King's The Shining. It's because Stephen King, to anyone that knows me well, Stephen King is by far and away my favourite author. So in every book, I just drop in a reference, and it's always Torrance, because The Shining is my favourite Stephen King book, one of my favourite films, great characters. There is always a Torrance in every book.
Well, we're getting to the
All right.
bottom of Jamie Sinclair here. And also a tip for writers who are scratching their heads looking for names for characters. You've discovered a random surname generator via Liverpool Football Club.
Absolutely.
There will be others as well. Now, you mentioned your work, because you have a day job as well. You work for the NHS. Can you say what you do, or is this a confidential thing with it being such a
No, I
delicate
can say what I
organisation?
do. It won't mean a great deal, I don't think. I work for NHS England, which runs the NHS in England at the moment. The government are in the process of dismantling it, but that's a much longer conversation for another day.
Right.
And I am um, I'm the deputy director, but there isn't actually a director. So I'm basically lead on cancer delivery for the northeastern Yorkshire region. So if there's anything to do with the delivery of cancer-related stuff in the northeastern Yorkshire, that would be in my remit. So it's a
Wow,
big
that's
old job, big old
quite the
responsibility.
responsibility. Yeah.
It keeps me occupied when I'm not doing writing books.
Right. So, does anything from your work help you with the writing?
It's yeah. I mean, there's as any writer will probably tell you, professional, amateur, and anywhere in between. There's a story in everything. So, because I spend most of my day having conversations with people, often like this, on whether it's on Microsoft Teams or whatever, there's always something, whether it's someone's life at home that they tell you about, or something in a hospital, or there's always a story there. And even some of my earlier books were actually based in and around the fringes of the NHS and more directly kind of took from the day job. Less so now as the job's become a bit more responsible. It's a bit harder to put it in a book for fear of causing all sorts of legal havoc. but in the early days of my NHS career, I frequently would base it on even some of the characters on work colleagues, work settings, and some of my early books are very much centred around the NHS before it became more of a police crime focus. There was very much an NHS focus to at least a couple of the books, but not so much anymore. But yeah, it's certainly full on, and it's a lot of responsibility. But I nowadays I don't know anything else.
Right. So you've got no experience working within the police, because in the book, there's a lot of police procedure and the way things work. Was that a lot of research, or did you have an in?
No, I don't actually. I mean, I used to work with two retired policemen. Again, when I was in the NHS, they actually worked with me in a former job. They were retired and came back and joined the NHS to just do a little bit of extra, I suppose. So I had a bit of insight from chatting to them, mainly from a point of view of the stuff they used to get up to. How true some of that was, I don't know, but they were police from another time, so it probably was all true. And they actually were based at Lancaster Police Station, so some stories from them filter in. But again, a lot of the benefit of being an author is you have a lot of author friends and a lot
Right.
of author contacts, and a lot of them write similar sort of stuff in that they write thrillers or crime or police stuff. So by being in and around them and chatting to them and reading their stuff, you get a lot of insight into how certain scenes would look. And there are also quite a lot of people out there who are kind of retired police officers who will give you advice on police procedures. And there's also a really well-known manual, so well-known that I've currently forgotten the title of it, but it's kind of the Police Procedure Murder Handbook, and I have a copy of that as well. That I refer to in terms of how they would investigate a scene or how they would set up a scene and all that. So some of it is lifted directly from that as well in terms of this is what they would actually do. So broadly, but I always remind people, because some people are sticklers, I do remind people it's not to the letter, it's fiction, so some of it has to be bent to fit the story,
Yeah.
um, as it does in any film or TV show or
Has to
play or
make a good
whatever.
tale, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, because if you're just stuck to people don't watch an episode of Vera, for example, and expect that to be to the letter of police procedure, I don't think, because it's probably not, but inspired by and close enough to. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's not far off. So I think I tend to focus more on the characters, and when I have to chuck in a bit of procedure, it's normally around a lot of the forensic stuff or the evidence stuff, rather than. I mean, I'm sure a lot of the police don't get to behave like D.I. Keegan does. One would hope that is the case.
Yes. Let's talk about D.I. Keegan. Where does the character of him come from? Because in a way, he reminded me a lot of, and this is a 70s reference, and I'm not sure if you'll be up to speed with it, but Regan in The Sweeney. Now, this is a more northern version, but he, his home life is beyond perfect. He's got, would you describe him as an alcoholic? He's a heavy drinker. He's got
Yeah,
issues. He's not, he's by no means perfect.
Always a distance from perfect, which is where all the most fun takes place.
Yes.
Yeah, he's not unlike. I mean, he's not. I mean, I'm a big John Thorpe fan, and was a Regan fan, and
Right.
yeah, the idea of we're the Sweeney son. It's that type of. It's a bit of a throwback, and in this book, he very much. I like to think he goes right up to the line, but of course the title kind of tells you that he perhaps does sneak over it a little bit.
Yeah.
But he kind of, because it's fiction, I know in the job I do, there's so much rules and regulations, as there will be in the police, that there are things that lead to frustration because there's a right thing to do and there's what you're able to do within the
Yes.
confines of the job. And I
Yes.
wanted to put Keegan in a place where, well, there are wrongs that need to be righted and there needs to be some justice. And he's quite willing to, he carries the weight with him, but he's willing to go to the place where he needs to go to get the justice that's required. And that is a little bit of a Sweeney throwback, I suppose, but also a little bit of a, certainly the early Rebus books by Ian Rankin, he was that type of copper as well. When he was still, not the old kind of Rebus who he is now, but the younger Rebus, like the ex-army Rebus, was more than happy to chuck someone down a flight of stairs and have a drink afterwards. He's that type of throwback where if there needs to be a little bit of justice and we need to blur the lines, then we'll carry the weight of it with us afterwards, but we'll do it anyway.
Yeah, but he's doing it to get justice, and I don't know how the real police do, because they know who the villains are, they know what they did, they know how they did it, but they need specific evidence to be able to, they need the MMO just to arrest them. It must be very frustrating for actual real coppers who have to follow rules that basically set the guilty free, and it has to be like that to protect the innocent, obviously. But yeah, I like the way that he was on the side. He uses his powers for the forces of good and not for evil. But he's not quite a vigilante, or he's not a vigilante by any means. He's a decent bloke, even though he's massively flawed. Is he based on anyone in particular?
Well, there's always with any, I don't know, I think most writers would say the same. There's bits of me in there, I suppose. He kind of gets to do and say things and express opinions that maybe you can't do in everyday life. And that's always good. Crime writing is always good for a bit of social commentary. So there's plenty of that in the book. But again, based on a lot of what I read. So there's bits of, even though it's American and set completely differently, there's elements certainly in the dialogue influenced by Harlan Coben, specifically his Myron Bolitar novels. There's a pair of characters who are massively big sellers and my favourites of Coben's. Myron Bolitar and his best friend Win, and they do and say things, again, all for the right reasons and for good, but they are more than happy to break the rules and do what needs to be done and give people a bit of a kick if they need it. So there's a lot of that inspired in there. Again, early Rebus, because I'm a massive Ian Rankin fan and everyone who knows me well knows that. Get a bit starstruck on the occasions I've met him. And not quite as articulate as I am, hopefully now. Tend to get a little bit excited and a bit quiet. So a lot of that in there. And again, in terms of the setting, a little bit of the more recent Mark Billingham stuff as well, because he's got he's started a new series and he's set it around Blackpool. So it's in terms of it, mine being sort of set in Morecambe and Lancaster. All you're basically talking about is a faded seaside town trading on former glories. It's a bit run down and a lot of deprivation. The two are fairly easily transposed. So, and I know that well because I grew up in it. And I read the new Mark Billingham books and thought, this is where it needs to be set. I know it backwards. And then you've got the shiny promenade and the lovely view in Morecambe. And then a couple of streets back is where it all happens and where all the life is. And it's not always very pleasant. So endless stories, which is why I think TV series like The Bay, which is set in Morecambe, it uses that to visual effect really well. It's a great opening scene on the credits when they're flying over the bay and then there's folk getting murdered on the back streets all over the place. So it's that. Yeah, exactly that.
And the specific locations you've mentioned in the book, are they all real places?
All very real, yes. In every book, I do that consciously because it's easier in my head in terms of the geography of roaming around the place, because I know it's real and I can kind of cement it somewhere. So I don't have to sort of imagine the setting as well as the characters and the dialogue. I can just worry about the plot because the characters are kind of based on versions of me and my friends and characters I've read about, as I've described. But yeah, the places are real because they all mean something to me. So as an easy example, Keegan's Local was my local growing up. It's my pub.
And so you didn't change the name of the pub or anything?
Didn't even change the name of the landlord.
Is the landlord based on the real landlord, or do they share the same name?
It's the same landlord. That's the
guy.
Irishman. Yeah, he's the guy.
Wow.
Yeah, Mick the landlord in the upstairs.
That's a bit brave. Does he know?
No, he left long ago.
I see. He's a previous landlord. He's not the current landlord.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I mean, I've not been in the upstairs for probably 15, 20 years. But this is a version of Morecambe that doesn't quite exist now. It's a version of Morecambe I grew up in and around. So the upstairs, and it's Keegan talks about it. It's a version of Morecambe that doesn't exist now. He's kind of revisiting Morecambe because he's gone back there, and he talks about his childhood in Morecambe. That was me, because I grew up as in a thriving Morecambe, and when I became a teenager and discovered pubs, the upstairs was our local, and Mick was
Right.
our landlord, and
Right.
all the lock-ins and him, the smoking ban came in, not for Mick, it didn't.
Right.
And he would, and all that's true. That's all real. That all
Right.
happened. People will think, no, that doesn't happen. That's what happened. If Mick was having a lock-in, it's because he fancied having a couple of drinks, so he just locked the door and carry on. If you still had to be there,
Yeah.
happy days. So yeah,
Yeah.
all that's real. It's all inspired by that. And the West End of Morecambe, where I grew up, that's where that is. So it's all, if this ever became a bestseller and they made a film of it, it's all right there for you. Just go and film it, because all the locations are there, and it's all waiting to be discovered. All as written.
The dialogue now and again made me laugh, and there were times when I was recording it when I'd have to go back because I could hear myself starting to smile instead of because some of the comedy in it, and it's not a comedy book by any means, but there are some of the dialogue when it gets particularly real, it made me smile, and I'd find myself smiling. Your voice sounds slightly different when you smile, and some of them only work if you can deliver it without it sounding like the narrator knows it's funny. It has to be done straight, like so much, you see so much comedy acting that's done on the TV, and if they did it with a smile and a wink, it wouldn't be funny. It's only because it's done the way it's done. So where did the idea for the comedy and the dialogue come from, or did you just find it coming out funny because you're basing it on real things that people have said and done?
Yeah, to an extent. I mean, first and foremost, and you and I discussed this when you were producing the book. I think the way you delivered a lot of that landed really, really well. It brought it to life, and when I was listening to it back, found myself chuckling along because you absolutely
Great.
nailed it. And so because obviously I wrote it and I can hear it in my head when I'm reading it, but then to hear it back, oh yeah, that's exactly it. Nailed it, and it made it, really brought it to life. So yeah, that was tremendous, and hopefully people who listen to it will really get it, because it's exactly what you described. It's kind of delivered it almost without being in on the joke, and did it deadpan. So yeah, that worked really well. But the dialogue, yeah, I mean, that is largely, and people still struggle with this. It's basically how Keegan and Torrance talk to each other is pretty much how me and my friends talk to each other. If you sat in the room, if you sat in the upstairs, downstairs with me and my friends, that's the conversation you'd be having. It's how Keegan and Torrance talk, and the sort of stuff, the way Keegan talks to Mick in the pub. I've had that conversation dozens of times, in that versions of that conversation with people like him or with my friends, and the way he talks with Torrance is broadly how me and my friends talk to each other when we're out. It's dead easy to write because it's natural to me. And I've just, I'm hanging police story around it and a crime story around it. But the way they deliver the lines and some of the kind of deadpan bits, and even in the really dark scenes where they'll suddenly say something and drop a line in, that's exactly how we talk to each other. So
Yeah.
and anyone who knows me well when they read my books, they'll be like, that's me. I said that when we were out that night. I said that, and I just, like I said before, there's always a story in everything from talking to people. It's just that, chuck it in, and I've got lines written, and I know a lot of people. I know Ian Rankin does this, and Stephen King does it. They have books filled with notes and ideas that mean nothing, and I'll suddenly go back to a page of something, and it'll be a scene. And I've got one that's going to be in a book at some point. I'll tell you about it now. But I was in the pub in the village we used to live at before we moved here, and a friend of ours who works in the pub manager, a guy called Andrew, he was telling me a story about one of his previous jobs and where he met Andrea Corr of the band The Corrs.
Yeah.
And I won't tell you the story he told me because it's for the book. But he just dropped it in, re nothing. At some point, a character in one of my books is going to tell that story about Andrea Corr in that, because it's hilarious the way he told it. And he swears blind it's true. So that's going in a book because it's too good not to. I couldn't get it in this book. Might be in the follow-up. And I've got dozens of those. Every writer does. But you just pick them up from conversation and just keep them in the back pocket and just drop them into a scene. And then someone like you brings them to life and it becomes hilarious.
Brilliant. So how did you get into writing in the first place then? Were you, was English and English lit one of your favourite topics? And did it just, and you were a big reader, I'm guessing?
Yeah, I mean, like every writer, always consuming books. So avid reader from being a kid. I was very fortunate when I was really, really small, though you don't appreciate any of it until you're much older. When I was primary school, and I say this now for all, my mother and I do argue a lot at times and always have done, as a feature of our relationship. One of the best things she's ever done for me and my brothers was to teach us to read before we went to school.
Right.
I didn't know that was a good thing then. So I went to primary school aged 4 or whatever age you go to school in Morecambe, in the West End of Morecambe, and I was the only kid in my class that could read.
Wow.
So what they
You would
did,
have been streets ahead of the other kids.
well, that
Yeah.
became apparent. And again, I didn't know this, but I was immediately moved up a year. Not
Oh,
because I was the
wow.
brightest kid in the class, but because I could read.
Yeah.
So, when I arrived, the teacher spent a lot of their day teaching kids to read, but I could already read. So there was no benefit for me sitting there. So after a few weeks of saying to me, you can just sit and read a book. So I was at school, and school for me was just sitting reading a book of my choice,
Brilliant.
in West End County Primary School in Morecambe, still there. And so I was moved up here. So yeah, avid reader, and then obviously we used to write short stories in primary school. Went to secondary school again. That features in this book because the school is real, and when he walks around the school and the kids who go to that's my school, and the hospital his wife works at is next to the school. That's all real. Yeah, I read all through school, then started writing and did lots of things like school magazines and things like that. So it was always there, but never really consciously of I'm going to do this, but always creative because I always wrote, always read, was in bands, played lots of gigs around pubs and stuff like that. So I was always creative, and all my friends are kind of arty, creative types. And then when I left school, we quickly realised after a year of being on the dole that we weren't, in fact, going to take the charts by storm, and be the next Happy Mondays or Charlatans or Stone Roses. And that was a disappointment. So I needed something else to do. And I was fortunate enough, a lot of my friends weren't, but I was fortunate enough to have a place at uni, quietly sat there in the background waiting for me, and my parents could afford to send me. So I recognised by then I was fortunate. So I scuttled off to uni, and did English at uni and a few other things, but mainly English at uni. And creative writing was part of that. And then that's where I really got a taste for it. And then that was late 90s. Then I went off to uni again and just focused on writing and publishing. That's when I wrote my first book. So that would have been turn of the 1999 I did that.
Hmm.
And from then on, that's been it. Never stopped doing it.
And at what point did you then decide, I'm going to work for the NHS and do this as something I just really enjoy and for fulfillment rather than taking on the pressure of having to be a jobbing author?
Well, circumstance dictated, really. I mean, the youngsters, of which I used to be one, and suddenly find myself, you blink and turn around, and here I am, nearly 50. Not quite sure when or how that happened, but because when I'm describing, school in the late 90s, it still feels like it was just, last Friday to me, but clearly not. So there was no Kindle then, there was no Amazon, there was no phones, there was only just mobile phones, there was no internet as it is now, there was no social media, which will seem totally alien to a lot of people. There was no option to do what we're doing. And there was a lot less people writing books. So consequently, it was an awful lot easier to get an agent and get published.
Yeah. But back then you needed
So,
to. You couldn't be an indie
no,
author back then
absolutely,
either.
there was no
Yeah.
option. So I went to uni and was very fortunate, and I did recognise it by this point, that I had some very high-profile people on that course in terms of the tutors, which opened a lot of doors really quickly. I suppose I was fortunate enough I wrote a book that they liked, so I suppose I have to take some credit for that, but I was very fortunate they liked it. And what they did was put me in touch with some agents, and I ended up with a London agent for my first book
Wow.
without having to ask or do anything other than having written a
Wow.
book.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was fairly normal because I didn't know otherwise. So there I was, having written a book, still at uni, with an agent in London, thinking at that point, this is going to be the career path. And I genuinely thought that was it.
Yeah.
So the book was sent off to 10 of the biggest publishers who are still broadly the biggest publishers in the world. And essentially what happened was I got 10 rejections from those publishers, but two or three said, we'd like to know a bit more about this. And then one actually said, and the one was Transworld, who were part of Random House, so still massive.
Mm-hmm.
They said, we would like this, but we'd quite like the ending to be different. And this is the naivety of youth, I suppose, and that kind of I'm an artist type compulsion that people have, and perhaps not realizing that the world isn't what you think it is in your head. I said, I'm not changing that. I'm an artist. How dare you? What do you know, Transworld at Random House, about books? And they said, we think we know quite a lot if you're not willing to change it. And so discussions carried on, all by letter then, of course, because there was no email. So I've still got a stack of letters between myself, my agent, Random House. And they said, if you ever come to your senses, we can maybe revisit this. But then the world moves on. And that's as close as I came to being a published author with Transworld Random House. That is the road not travelled and the lesson learned, I still carry that with me. Because that's kind of the sliding doors moment. If that had panned out even slightly differently, then I may well have been a career author. Again, that book may not have sold. They might have dropped me, and we would still be sitting here now, or I'd be Ian Rankin. Who knows? That's the fun, because we'll never know. So years passed, and I wrote a few books, and needed a job. Was going to go to uni, do a PhD, needed funding, etc. There was a job going in the NHS, just literally opening the post, because in those days people opened post. So 20 odd years ago, got a job opening the post with no view of it being a career, and 20 odd years later, I'm no longer opening the post, but still in the NHS.
Right. Okay. So that worked out successfully anyway. And then along comes the internet, which gives people the opportunity to produce books independently. And here you are, an author with titles behind you, with now an audiobook as well, the fastest growing sector in publishing, audiobooks. It could turn around, be a nice retirement plan, wouldn't it? Royalties instead of wages.
Yeah, I mean, it would still be. I think I would love that to be the case. Now it's more of a, if it happens, that would be great, rather than when I was kind of 19, 20, when I kind of needed it to happen because it defined who I was. Now it doesn't. Now I write because I really enjoy it, and I'm in a really fortunate position that I can afford to produce audiobooks and pay for ad, because the day job covers all that. So I'm really, really fortunate, and I'm very well aware of how fortunate I am. And I get time and space to write as well. So that's and I wouldn't swap it now. In my early 20s, I struggled quite a bit with it, because in my head my place was I wanted to be a career author, and because it became apparent it wasn't going to happen, I did struggle with that for quite a long time. Mm-hmm. But then over time, you get a bit older and a bit wiser, hopefully. It doesn't matter as much now, and I do enjoy it. But certainly, I think by the time, there's quite a lot of my books out there now. There's probably 10, 12 out there now, and then this audio book, and they all do okay. And there's always another one on the horizon. And I've done a couple that have been independently published with that kind of small presses as well. So that's always there. So yeah, I really enjoy it, and I've got a really wide network of author friends and author contacts. So it's probably about where it needs to be, I think, now. And if something else, I think the only thing that would make me steer off this course now, and it's the one thing that doesn't ever happen anymore because it doesn't exist. If someone like Random House rang up and said, all right then, here's a contract for X amount, that would turn my head. But otherwise, I think as things are, it's pretty good.
And would you change the ending if they asked now?
In a heartbeat. They could write the ending. Lesson learned, road not taken.
Jamie, it's been great talking to you at last. It was fabulous working on the book. The book is called Crossing the Line. It's a crime thriller, but there's so many more dimensions to it. It deals with alcoholism, it deals with the breakdown of a marriage, it deals with who you can trust at work, finding the right people to work with the chemistry of that, with solving a crime, and with literally crossing the line. It's a fabulous book. It was a joy to read, and I think I told you that when I was reading it. It was, I work on multiple books at a time, and at the time I was working on yours was the one I always look forward to working on. It's the one I found myself talking to my wife about at the end of the day when she says, "Well, I was book reading today," and I said, "Oh no, I'm doing this one," and and there's this crim, and because I don't want to do any spoilers, but there's my favourite line in the book, which you probably know what it is, which I'm not going to say. It's a dumb criminal line. It's a criminal who basically shops himself by protesting his innocence. But I'll go no further. But to be able to share that, it's a wonderfully well-written book, and I think I said it to you at the time when we were doing it, is like, this is every bit as good as the books I do, every bit if not better than the books I do for people who are full-time authors. This is really quality stuff, and it now makes a lot more sense now you've told me your story of how you came at it, of how you've got the background, of how you're always storing bits of dialogue, and you're networking with other writers, and and then starting out reading early, and you're just reading so much, and it's been good to get to know you in this brief whatever. It's been just over half an hour, 35 minutes or whatever it's been. What is next? You say there's always something on the horizon. What is next for Jamie Sinclair?
Well, I am often prone to going off track and writing something else, but because I'm particularly fond of D.I. Keegan, the second book in what is now hopefully going to be a series there are 50,000 words written of that book, so it's fair to say it's well underway.
Yeah.
So that will be out, and tentatively called, you heard it here first, folks, tentatively called Shadows of Redemption, because there was quite a lot of crossing of lines in the first book, so there probably needs to be some sort of redemption in the second book. But featuring characters now that people will recognise and know, hopefully. So building on those relationships, and adding one or two extra folk into the mix as well. So that's what's next, and that's going to be off to the editor hopefully in the next couple of months. But I am notoriously poor with my own deadlines, because I exist in a world of deadlines. But so that will come, and there's always other standalone stuff in the background as well. Fed by the ideas we talked about. So that's what's next, and hopefully that will, all being well, touch wood, given how well I think this went, and how much I enjoyed this process, hopefully there'll be an opportunity for us to work together again in the future.
I hope so. I hope so. This one is called Crossing the Line. It's a Kindle, it's a full-on print book as well, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. In fact, would make a lovely gift.
Would make a lovely gift, or you could download the audiobook if you wanted to.
Even
if you prefer to do it that way, a good time efficient way to consume books. You can do it when you're driving or doing housework, or just contemplating the meaning of life. Whatever, really. If that's what you need to do, and I'll put a link in the description if you'd like to download the book. If you click onto the book, there's a link there to the Amazon. Where you can get the Kindle or the audiobook. Check it out there. Jamie Sinclair, continued success. Good to talk to you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Graham. Nice to talk to you. Cheers.